Hey, we're ready.
We're ready. Everybody's ready. Yes.
Sorry about that. Electric Mermaid Emcee Derek Hanebury is a Port Alberni writer of poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction who taught writing here at North Island College for many years. His last book, Both Sides Now, is a collaboration of short fiction with two of his past students. His upcoming solo collection, entitled Something Else Altogether, is now out.
Thank you, Karl. Welcome, everybody. Come on in and find a chair for the newcomers. There we go. Awesome. So, welcome to the May session of Electric Mermaid. Hard to believe that a whole month has gone by. I don't know. It felt like about 2 weeks to me, but anyway, it's great to be back here and great to see everybody again. Those of you out in the Zoom world, and we've got a pretty solid little crowd here at Char's Landing as well, live. And actually have all three of our featured readers here live, so that's kind of a treat for tonight. So just want to start off by saying we're zooming to you from Port Alberni, which is on the unceded territory of the Hepetcheseth and Sishat First Nations, whose ancestors we're grateful to for sharing their land with us, even if we stole it. But anyway, here we are. This is going to be maybe a little bit of a shorter evening than normal. We don't have quite so many open micers, but that's okay. We've got three featured readers, so they've got lots of time to stretch out and share their work with us. So as you know, Electric Mermaid is a diverse group of people that come together to just share our love of the spoken word, the written word, just language and ideas. It's a place that likes to think of itself as inclusive. We don't care what level you're writing at, whether you've been published or not, or you're beginning or you're ending, or we're just happy to have people here sharing their work together and respectfully and encouraging each other to carry on with writing or a solitary activity that you have to be a little bit crazy and weird to stay with, but once you do, there's nothing more satisfying, right? For those of us who do it, that feeling of when the right words come through and you feel like you've captured something, there's nothing like it. So Electric Mermaid is kind of a good little testing ground for you to come out and read pieces and get an audience reaction and get some feedback from your fellow writers. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. And we want to say a big thank you, of course, to Char here at Char's Landing, our hostess with the mostest, who runs the Zoom. Runs the Zoom and also manages everything here on the ground at Char's Landing, which for those of you who are out there who haven't been here, if you ever come through Port Alberni, you have to stop and check it out. It's a great little old church that's been converted to this social hub, and she hosts all kinds of activities, cultural activities here and community groups, and so Port Alberni is so lucky to have her here doing what she does. And if anyone out there, we've all donated here on the way in, but anyone out there who wants to put a little money in her coffers, that would be wonderful. E-transfer at charslanding.com is available for that. And Karl has already whipped that into the chat. So thank you for that, Karl. Karl is our moderator. We're grateful to him for keeping us on track here. Thank you, Karl. And my name again is Derek Hanebury, your MC for the night, and sometimes reader here as well. So I think we're just going to dive in here and get started. So we've only got two Zoom readers at present, so we're going to do our Zoom readers first, and then we'll bring our featured readers in after that. So we're going to start off with Jennifer Wen, all the way out east in London, Ontario. Our favorite visiting poet that is a regular here on Electric Mermaid. So hoping you're going to share some more of your good poetry with us tonight, Jennifer.
Well, it's poetry. You can judge whether it's any good or not, I guess.
I haven't heard anything from you that wasn't, so wasn't.
Well, we'll have hopes. Yeah, I've got one poem in 10 short cantos. Actually, I was just checking, and I haven't done this anywhere yet, so that's at the world premiere. You'll hopefully see where this came from. I think originally, it's called Emergence, and it has an epigraph. Searching through the fragments of my dream-shattered sleep, which credit to Gordon Lightfoot from Carefree Highway for that line. 1. Out of abyssal silence and Stygian nightmare, 2 figures trailing miasmic streamers of dread emerge and approach, wordlessly weaving an indissoluble web, binding all of us, adults and one child, to their plea, and we answer, we agree, this dyad must be saved. 2. Urgent debate, how to proceed. We must escape, we must journey. One voice urges west, the most direct route home. We acquiesce and set out, walking the misty road, and sweep up other wanderers into the mission. We are now 10, a decuplet of seeking spirits. 3. Footsore, we glance back, are greeted by gaining darkness. We must go faster. A car is willed into existence. Miraculously, we all fit. Although my hat is too distinct, it must be removed. We must conceal our purpose. Our numbers call attention. I will hold the child close, blend together. One who speaks the language will drive. I sit back right, and we hurry away. 4. We are tired. We are exposed. There, isolated and deserted, a small villa, refuge from chaos and danger. We slip in for a moment of peace. Alarm, they come, hide. I disappear into a bed, my head to the foot, cower to shut it out, slide into saving transfiguration and transposition. 5. Slam the trunk shut, resume positions in quest, only for a following sedan to draw ever closer. We must protect the dyad and protect the child, but we cannot outrun this. We must face them. Confrontation ensues. We hide the child, we speak our truth, advocate for the dyad, and obtain release. 6. Another traveler senses it. Danger again, but danger within. Something is treacherous. This must be excised. 3 of us challenge the apparition. Its silver knife flashes. I wrench the blade free. It reaches for the seams of its shroud, but the others are too fast. Razor-sharp quills are seized. I stab over and over. It vanishes, and we are now 9. 7. Realization dawns, sickening and sudden. For many miles, we've been going the wrong way. Who read the map? Our vanquished wraith? No one knows. Despair sidles up. But look, see here, a port within reach. Carry on. Seek to take ship from there. 8. The tang of sea air fills the senses, but stay alert. Threat still stalks, and we need money for passage. Just one opportunity asks no questions. Design communiques, crank them out on an archaic printing press. Remembered youth flowing, I take control, lay out a page, then joined by an elder from a dimension unseen with another sheet, and we race to finish. 9. We two fall to chatting, realize the dyad story must be told, the nightmare laid bare. There is one priceless picture, just one, simple, but it can hint, it might warn. A glowering wall, petrified sandbags, scarred with inlaid gaping skulls and surmounted by razor wire. We will duplicate it, insinuate into the narrative. The truth will be honored. The silence ended. The unseen dimension calls the elder back, and I am left alone with the travelers and the creation. 10. Passage has been earned, the ship about to sail. Emanation is at hand. We 9 are all there, dyad and child and sextet. We kaleidoscope review and expectation. An exhausted and relieved sun rises behind me. Memory sparks dance on waiting waves.
Wow.
Thank you.
I felt like I almost had to hold my breath till they were on the boat. Oh, thank God. Yeah, wow. Powerful stuff. Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a dream.
Wow.
It was, I had to simplify it a little bit,
Mhm.
actually. It was a little more complicated than that, but I had to do a little bit of simplification.
Wow. Amazing.
When I get ones like that, yeah, I wake up almost more tired than when I went to bed.
You've been through an epic journey and
That's right.
been there. Yeah. Super. Thanks so much, Jen. All right. Our next reader is going to be Joy Sheldon, coming to us from the Cowichan Valley. And she's going to share with us a piece about a holdup, I think.
Yes. This was a little piece that was recently published in an online magazine by the Wordstorm Society, which is an arts group out of Nanaimo. And the magazine's called Counterflow. And you can look it up. I think you just Google it. I don't think you have to do YouTube. And it's free. And there's a lot of poetry in it that might interest Jennifer particularly. And there are a few short stories, and mine was one of them. I had to restrict myself to 500 words. And if any of you know me, you know, for Joy to write something in 500 words, I did a lot of editing. So anyway, it's going to be included in my work in progress, which is called, it's an anthology for seniors. It's called A Senior Smorgasbord, Stories and Poems to Age By. And I hope to publish it by fall. And it will have 10 chapters. This will be in the chapter called Grandparent Heroes. I love writing about old people that do heroic things. So, oh, and I should make an apology for the swearing in it, but the editor said that because the two characters in the story who swear are punks, it really adds realism and impact. So I hope my ministers of one of my churches isn't listening in, or if he is, he doesn't get too shocked. So without further ado, here is Holdup, very short. The doors of the bank burst open with a metallic clang. A couple of doped up teenagers, black hoodies pulled low, rushed in. The barrels of their AK-47s gleamed in the afternoon light. I could smell their stress sweat from where I stood in the lineup. A lady near the end of the line started to scream, and punk number one shouted, "Do that again and you're dead, lady." She shut up. Hophead number one, "Okay, all you motherfuckers, put your hands in the air where I can see them. Drop to your knees." The tallest and mouthiest, who had just spoken, pointed his weapon at me. "That includes you, Granny. Yeah, I want to see him now." I had been doing some messy painting and was wearing my long-sleeved floppy paint shirt. When I was slow to comply, he marched over and stuck the gun in my face. "Move now, you old bitch." Putting my hands up in plain sight, I pleaded with him. "Look, son, you don't have to do this. I'm sure if you put your gun down now and your friend cooperates, you can both get out of this alive." He sneered with a sound that was more like a snarl as he shoved the barrel tip right between my eyes. I heard the loud click as he cocked the firing mechanism. In one swift movement, I grabbed the rifle barrel and swung it around and downwards. I took out his left kneecap. He went down like a fallen oak, screaming in pain. As I dropped to one knee, my peripheral picked up his jittery friend, covering the nearest teller and trying to scope out the rest of the bank. I reversed the rifle barrel and shot him in the right shoulder. He dropped his weapon, bleeding profusely. I couldn't tell whether they had a lookout covering the front of the bank, but I ran forward, gun at the ready. On the way, I nodded to the teller to hit the panic button under her counter. No sign of anyone but a few startled onlookers outside. I ran back inside, weapon lowered, but at the ready. Punk number one was still on the floor, clutching his now shattered knee. Punk number two was lying half on, half off the wicket, puking his guts out. His hoodie was becoming noticeably stained with blood. I gestured to another bystander who looked like he could be a doctor. Then I heard the sirens. I rushed for the entrance. Punk number one reached out and grabbed at my pant leg. I avoided contact as he whined. Geez, Grandma, where'd you learn to handle a weapon like that? Sassily, I responded. Sorry, Sonny, you should have listened when I gave you your chance to surrender. You and your buddy over there are just a couple of amateurs. Let me introduce myself. Yes, I'm Brandon and Brandy's grandma, but I'm also Special Agent Angela Stonewall, CIA, retired.
I thought she was going to introduce herself as G.I. Joy. But
That'll be the next one. That'll be the next story, all right.
That was super. Love happy endings. They get their comeuppance. Excellent. Thank you so much, Joy. All right, so we're going to move to in-house now and some of our local featured writers and some not so local featured writers that have come to join us here in Port Alberni, which is wonderful to see. But I think we'll start off with Laura Sturgeon, who's a local Port Alberni writer. And I'll tell you a little bit about Laura. For those of you who don't know, she started writing at the young age of 12 and has led her to the publication of a short story compilation called In Bloom. Then she wrote a junior fiction novel, The Big Ugly Sweater, which I reviewed for, a good little novel. And then a young adult novel, Alone in the Castle, and a picture book, Where in the World Will I Find the Perfect Pet? So very prolific writer. Laura just cranking them out here, and she's contributed to the her short story Pit Stop Peril to the Alberniology that we published as a fundraiser. Was that last year already? Oh my God, I guess it was, yeah, before Christmas. Anyway, so we're really really happy to have Laura here. She's going to share with us some of her writing tonight from, I'm guessing, your latest book. We'll turn it over to you, Laura. It's all yours.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. Hope you guys are doing well. So I brought a couple of my newest ones here. This one and this one were both published at the same time. So I think the last week I read a bit from this book. This is Alone in the Castle. It's a young adult fiction novel, and it's about a girl who's 14, and she's kind of stuck in this castle-like home on the top of a mountain, and she's got this strange medical condition. So, and it's kind of frightening, so she can't really be seen just anywhere, so she's very secluded. So, and then she ends up meeting a bunch of hippies, and they all accept her for who she is, and they help her out. There's a lot of 70s references and whatnot in the story, so it's a lot of fun, actually. So, but I figured that I would read this picture book tonight. So it's story time with Laura. And this is called Where in the World Will I Find the Perfect Pet? So it's all in rhyme, and illustrations are done by April Chadwick, which is Colton Nelson's wife. And her and I worked together to create this. All right. My name is Willard Westerly. I'm short and stout and very wealthy. I have a new car, a big house, and good job. Unfortunately, many people think I'm a snob. I'd been feeling so lonely and wanting a pet and decided to travel to see what I could get. I packed up my suitcase to begin my world quest to find the right pet that would suit me the best. There he goes on his little adventure. Not far from my home, I hopped on a train and spotted a moose grazing in its terrain. Its antlers were massive. It had a long face. Surely its size would demolish my place. I then spotted a beaver who was building a house. His teeth were enormous. He carried sticks in his mouth. He seemed to love gnawing and felling trees with haste, but I feared I'd go broke buying so much toothpaste. As I admired the scenery, I thought, what about a cat? Then down from a tree appeared one 20 times the size of that. A mighty cougar it was, its jaws open wide. To my horror, I could see a mouth full of fangs inside. This was no cute kitten, but a fierce mountain lion. If it clawed or bit me, I'd be injured and crying. And that's him on the train. At the end of the ride, what I saw was quite rare. From out of the forest strode a large black bear. It looked cute and cuddly, with fur I wanted to feel, but after licking its chops, I may be its next meal. Now off to South America, it was time to go. The next animal I discovered moved very slow. It had long claws and hung down from a tree. Its face was cute and seemed to smile at me. Wow, a sloth, but it was rather stinky. Its coarse fur was covered in green algae. The algae was used to protect it from prey, but was not something I'd want to smell every day. Black bear, sloth. Out in the jungle, I lay down for a nap. Then something slithered across my lap. I was terrified, staying as still as could be, as I felt a big snake coil itself around me. An anaconda it was, and it caused me much fright. It was not a good pet. Its hug was too tight. I wanted to scream, but would that make it mad? Am I going to be strangled? Oh, this is bad. Its skin was smooth. Its tongue flicked in and out. Would I live through this? It was easy to doubt. Then a miracle happened. A mouse scurried past. The snake slithered after it. Thank goodness, at last. There he is, caught in the snake. I took off running and arrived at a farm. Grateful I survived, no more need for alarm. The next animal I saw was a llama, soft and white. Petting its thick curly fur was sheer delight. Its beautiful lashes were long and black. Standing on guard, it had everyone's back. It chewed on some food at a very slow pace. Then to my surprise, it spat in my face. After all my bad luck, I still hoped for a pet. The right friend for me was the only one I'd get. Not one that would strangle or one that would spit. Not one too smelly, nor one that would split. Not one that would cause my home too much damage, but one that would be much easier to manage. Soft and gentle would be the best kind. So far, this wasn't too easy to find. On to Antarctica, my next place to go, known as the land of the cold ice and snow. I sailed to the South Pole on a fisherman's boat, dressed in long underwear and a very warm coat. It was such majestic land, all bluish white. Its glaciers so high were the most stunning sight. Black and white birds waddled all around, not flying above, but staying on the ground. There were hundreds of penguins, as happy as could be, but they should all remain with their family. On an ice floe lounged a cute chubby seal. It was eating some fish, enjoying its meal. Its whiskers were long, its face looked sweet. Bringing it home would be such a treat. But this mammal was not very easy to pick. I couldn't grab hold, its fur was too slick. No animal there should be taken away. The Antarctic's their home and where they should stay. I hoped in the next half of the world I would find the perfect pet for me, a one of a kind. I arrived in Australia with hopes high. That's when I saw a kangaroo hop by. She had a long tail and a baby in her pouch. But then Mama kicked me and I yelled, ouch. Although my leg hurt, I continued on walking. Not long after, I swore I heard someone talking. I was alone in a jungle, so how could that be? Then I looked up and saw a parrot in a tree. Its feathers were red, yellow, green, and blue. The beak was large, curved, and pretty too. It talked on and on, that's all I heard. I preferred right then to not own this bird. I continued on, and something jumped on my back. It was quite a shock and almost gave me a heart attack. It nuzzled my ear and sniffed my hair. Soon I realized it was a koala bear. He had a black nose and a sweet fuzzy face. I'd love for this animal to stay at my place. Could this be the right pet? Perhaps, maybe. Yes, this would make the most adorable fur baby. Ah, I said, my heart starting to melt. Instant love for this sweet creature I felt. It tore leaves off branches and chewed with glee. Soon another furry face was staring at me. Both faces looked the same as one another. This one I realized was the baby's mother. She looked quite worried, but would she attack? This was her baby, so I gave it right back. In a schooner, I crossed sea after sea and arrived in Asia to continue my journey. That's where I saw a black and white bear munching on bamboo shoots without a care. This panda was the fluffiest bear I'd ever seen. It looked much too adorable to be mean. I was sure this gentle giant would cause me no harm. Then to my shock, it tried to chomp on my arm. Since it seems no pets could be found in this land, perhaps I'd find one in an ocean of sand. I stood in a desert, sweating a lot. I needed water. This place was hot. The air was so dry, my eyes became hazy. That's when I felt I was starting to go crazy. Suddenly, an ocean appeared out yonder. But this is a desert, I started to ponder. The heat was too much, and I collapsed to the ground. There was dry land only, no water around. Soon I heard grunting. Something large was near. I looked up at a camel. He caused me no fear. He knelt beside me, and I climbed onto his hump, wondering why instead of two, he had only one lump. Riding a camel was something new. I certainly hoped he'd know what to do. His feet were huge for trekking across sand. With his help, I made it through the desert land. Once we reached town, we filled up with water. Good thing we did. It kept getting hotter. If it wasn't for this hero, I may not be alive. This was where he should stay to help others survive. I boarded a bus to continue along. So far, what I'd found had been all wrong. While riding the bus, a sign was seen. It said Africa. It was a place I'd not been. Once I arrived, I found a large grassy space and possible pets grazing all over the place. I was so excited, I didn't know which one to choose. I could pick any of them. I had nothing to lose. There were elephants, rhinos, giraffes, hippos, and more. It was like Noah's Ark. There were animals galore. Stretching my arms, I no longer felt like a wreck. I was ready to wrap them around each furry neck. I was sure this would be my chance to succeed. But nope, wrong again. This time, stampede. Everything shook. Hooves pounded the ground. Dozens of animals made the most deafening sound. Zebras, cheetahs, and lions ran fast as lightning. This scene, I must say, was terribly frightening. My legs weren't long. I couldn't run fast. I was sure this moment would be my last. Quite out of breath, I approached a wide tree. Hiding behind it provided safety. The herd rushed past, and I remained very still. No more of this continent. I'd had my fill. I slumped to the ground, defeated and sore. This was the worst search anyone could ask for. Oh, how did I get myself into this mess, ending up in such a state of distress? All I wanted was a pet to love, I shouted up at the sky above. Though sad, I continued the last leg of my quest. Leaving each animal behind had been for the best. I decided that Europe would be my last stop. It was a place I could rest, a place I could shop. Searching for a pet had proven all wrong. It definitely shouldn't be taking this long. I arrived in London for one last try. Then I saw a sign as my cab drove by. In bold letters it read, Saturday 2 p.m. dog show. Oh, how fun and exciting, I will definitely go. The showground was packed with dozens of breeds. Would one of these animals suit all my needs? Then as if my brain had come out of a fog. Why, I thought, hadn't I just gotten a dog? Dogs are loving and gentle, trained not to bite. Yes, they make perfect buddies. This felt so right. Back to Canada in a canoe so slow. To the SPCA is where I am to go. That's where I found a small furry pet, one that I hoped was the right one to get. She walked with a limp and her tail was bent. Her brown eyes watched me wherever I went. Sunny was her name, and she had a sweet face. She showed me so much love as I knelt down in place. She had brown and white fur and soft, gentle paws. I knew this animal would never shred me with claws. She could swim in my pool and have a yard to roam. Our journey had ended. We were now going home. Sunny. Just a side note, this book is pretty much about animal rights. It's about, like why you shouldn't remove pets from, or animals from their natural habitat. And so it teaches kids what the natural habitat is and about all the continents, what animals are on the continents, what they eat, what they look like, that sort of thing. So it's quite educational as well as it has an important message. So that's that one.
Just stay there for a second. That's one thing I love about your writing is that there's always a sort of a broader intention of of teaching in some way, and yet you write it in a way that the kids are going to gobble it up, right?
Yeah,
so
I
yeah,
hope so.
and same with your young adult novel and stuff. That's what I found. Like The Big Ugly Sweater definitely had that element to it.
Nice.
So
yeah, I haven't had this one with having much exposure yet, so I'm just kind of tonight was the
just
first time
getting
I've
out
actually
there.
read it to
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah, and it's a whole different ball game probably to market kids books like that,
Yeah.
right? I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
great. Well, beautiful artwork, and yeah. Any questions from anybody out there in the audience on the Zoom chat or anywhere? Do you want to ask Laura? No. No.
Well, where did you get all those rhymes? They're marvelous.
Well, I was up a lot. Well, it started out as a different story. It was actually going to start out as a man who had all of these pets in his house. And so, they were going to do funny things in his house. And then somehow I came up with this one. And then rhyme after rhyme after rhyme just kind of kept coming to me. And I couldn't stop it. So I just went a certain amount with it. And then I'm like, okay, well, why don't I just take the reader to every continent? And I just over and over. I couldn't stop. Seriously, I was up like all night, many nights.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thanks.
All around the world.
Thanks. Yeah, I like the idea of it too, but I really like the idea of animal rights. Like, you can't just take any pet and bring it home sort of thing, and, endangered species and all that. So, yeah. So.
Joy,
I missed where you got it published and how they did such nice glossy publishing job. Did that make the book quite expensive because they're really nice, bright, glossy pictures?
No, it wasn't too expensive, actually. I had my publisher that did this book put this together for me. But I did pay for it, though, because I wanted it done my way. Because I did have a publisher originally, but she wanted to change so much of it. And she wanted to remove like the animal rights part of it. And so she wanted to make it more adventurous. And I get that. Making it more adventurous is great, but animal rights is like really important to me, and that had to stay in the story. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to do it myself, and I did.
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, it's funny because earlier this evening I was talking with David Kipling and Kathleen Vance about staying true to your artistic vision and finding the publisher that fits with that, right?
Yeah.
Is so important
I
part.
had to. I
Yeah.
had no choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Animal rights. I'm so glad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I mean, it did cost a certain amount, but it wasn't too much. I mean, Colton did give me a deal. He helped me with it. And his wife didn't charge me too much because it was her first project when it came to doing illustrations for a children's book. So she had the opportunity to get to do this. And I had the opportunity to do my first children's book. So it worked both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that she helped me out because she did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Abby's a talented artist. She's very good.
She really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Laura. All right, our next featured reader is Kathleen Vance, and Kathleen and David both have come to us from Gibsons. They are our regular Zoom folks, but have come here to be live and in person at Char's, which is always a treat. And I'll tell you a little bit about Kathleen, which some of you might not have realized this, haven't listened to her for months now, but Kathleen actually has a PhD in German. And she taught workplace communication at BCIT for 30 years. And based on workplace interviews and tours of mills, mines, and labs, she wrote countless stories that placed students in real-life dilemmas that they would have to write themselves out of. Wouldn't you have loved to have a teacher like that when you were at school? I mean, my God. Imaginative or what? She also, she co-authored the textbook Writing for Success, which I had on my shelf at the college for 20 years, which is a pretty standard writing text in many colleges and first and second university, your university courses. So, yeah, wonderful. And so in addition to that, of course, she's writing a novel for middle grade readers. She's contributed to the anthology Don't Tell, Family Secrets. And she also contributed to our local Alberniology. So Kathleen, a regular here at Electric Mermaid, we're so happy to have you here in person and looking forward to hearing what you're going to share with us tonight.
Okay. Hello. Hello. Zoomland. Yes, hello, Zoomland. I'm not used to not being in Zoomland. All right. Anne could still hear the voices of the kids she knew. And if she had just the good sense to turn back, she'd be able to see those kids. But she had listened to that other voice that had already been carried off into the wind, a voice she had heard only once before, the voice of the kid who wasn't and maybe hadn't ever been there.
A little closer to the mic, Kathleen.
Woo!
There we go.
Oh, the voice of the kid who wasn't and maybe hadn't ever been there. I dare you. Ginny had been the first to start the trouble that sealed Anne's fate. I double dare you. Barry always followed Ginny's lead. I double, triple dare you. Sally always had to top everyone else. You're not chickening out, are you? Fred grinned. The only time Fred didn't feel like a chicken himself was when he was calling someone else chicken. Anne was no chicken. So she had turned her back on the kids, stopped to listen one more time, and started marching up the middle of the single-track railroad bridge. She knew the freight train only ran 2 or 3 times a day, but she had never paid attention to when it ran. Anne prayed that no train would come right now because there wouldn't be enough room on the bridge for both of them. Anne smelled the creosote of the dark wood, her 4th favorite smell in the world, after her father's pipe, her great-uncle's cigars, and her mother's perfume. Anne forced herself to walk slowly. She wasn't about to let the kids see her run. She made a show of looking over the low wooden railing way down to the water below, already black in the late afternoon. That backfired, because when she saw how far down it was, her hands started shaking and her knees started wobbling. If a train came now, Anne would be flattened, just like in the big squeeze last year at school, when Danny at the desk in front of her pushed his chair back and Lee at the desk behind her pushed his desk forward so that she could hardly breathe. It was like in Superman on TV, when Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, and Clark Kent were trapped in a steel-walled room, and the walls started moving closer and closer, and even the ceiling and the floor started moving, and they were almost flattened until Clark Kent turned into Superman. But Superman didn't go to her school, so Anne had banged her fist on the desk, and the teacher had made her stand in the corner for the other kids to laugh at. On that narrow railroad track, she'd be cornered like a rat without even a corner to run to, like when a teacher followed her down the hall after she left the classroom to switch her milk because she'd been given white instead of chocolate. The teacher had yelled at her and held her by both arms so she couldn't escape. It would serve them right if Anne was squished flat on the tracks by a freight train. Then they'd be sorry for being so mean to her. Anne knew she had to stop thinking about a freight train coming at her and flattening her. She started to do the times tables in her head, beginning with the 2 times and working up to the harder 7, 8, and 9 times. By the time she got to 9 times 9, the ordeal was over. She stepped off the far end of the bridge, turned round, raised both arms in the air, and shouted to the kids on the other side, "I'm the 1958 queen of the railroad bridge." Home safe, she thought. Oh no! It was just at that moment that it hit her. The railroad bridge was the only way back across the river. She had to walk back across this bridge. So she wasn't safe yet, not by a long shot. As Anne started back, she heard a high-pitched sound, and it was getting louder and louder. Oh no, the train's coming. Anne saw again the horrible, sad look on Leon's face when she had told him last year she couldn't be his friend at school because the other kids said if she was Leon's friend, they wouldn't be her friend. She saw herself standing outside looking into the window of the empty classroom where Leon had taken off all his clothes and was dancing in his long winter underwear. The teacher had made Leon stay in during recess because he had fought back when Danny and Lee were teasing him. Anne heard this strange girl, who must have been standing next to her, tell her in a voice she'd never heard before how one day Leon would dance on big stages in London and New York. The high-pitched sound got louder. Anne saw herself being made by the teacher to take a photograph of the class. Anne had brought her special camera to school that day, but only to show Ginny and Sally. The teacher had spotted the camera and made Anne take a class picture. There'd been no way out of it. Anne saw herself click on the shutter button and watched the green monster leap out of the camera with its red tongue sticking out at the teacher and all the kids. Oh, being flattened by a train is like drowning, Anne thought, only instead of her whole life, her whole horrible last year at school was flashing before her eyes, and the high-pitched sound was getting louder. Anne froze. She was too scared to do anything but listen. Oh, suddenly she started laughing. That's no train. That's Jimmy Campbell playing his stupid bagpipes. His house is somewhere near here. Anne continued walking. She reached the middle of the bridge. Halfway there, she thought. The next sound was so loud that it even drowned out Jimmy's bagpipes. This sound was definitely a train whistle, and it was getting louder. The track started to shake under Anne's feet. She saw the kids at the other end of the bridge jumping off the tracks and scrambling down the embankment. Then she could actually see the train with its horrible blinking bright lights. Anne knew in her heart of hearts that even the queen of the railroad bridge was no match for a fast-moving freight train. The train wasn't slowing down. The train driver hadn't even seen her. The whistle was getting louder. Now it was too late for the train to stop. Anne knew the driver had finally seen her because the whistle was starting and stopping over and over again, telling her to get off the track. Anne looked behind her. Could she beat the train if she made a run for it? Suppose she ran forward. Could she just make it to the start of the bridge, dive off the side, and roll down the embankment? No. She couldn't go back. She couldn't go forward. There was nowhere for her to go. The train kept coming, and the whistle kept getting louder. Anne shut her eyes and put her hands over her ears. Suddenly, someone grabbed her. Open your eyes, quick, over the railing. Are you crazy? It's too high and the water's too deep. I'll break both my legs and then I'll drown. No, there's a tiny ledge all along below the outside of the railing. It's not too far down. Trust me, your foot will find it. Hurry, do what I do. Anne swung one leg over and held onto the railing while she felt for the ledge with her foot. Found it, she called out in relief. Anne swung the other leg over. The ledge was so narrow, she had to stand sideways with one foot in front of the other. Get down as low as you can and hold the crisscross part of the railing as tight as you can. The train won't touch you, but if you don't hold on real good, it could blow you away when it goes by. Anne held on as tightly as she could. She remembered the time her father had taken them swimming at the beach, where the waves were so gigantic there was a fixed rope in the water for people to hold on to. Her father had wrapped her arms around that rope and told her to never let go. He had to go get her older brother and sister who had gone out too far and were in trouble. Her father said he would come right back, but he hadn't come back. An enormous wave had crashed over her and torn her from the rope. The wave had held her under the water, so she couldn't even get her head up to breathe. She couldn't scream, because then she would start swallowing water and drown for sure. She had to just play dead. And so today, Anne held even tighter onto the crisscross of the railing, because this time there would be no sandy beach for the wave to throw her onto, and no nice lifeguard to offer her popcorn and to help her find her mother. But unlike when she was hanging onto that rope in the ocean, this time she was not alone. That other girl was with her somewhere on the ledge, and she was hanging on too. The train noise now was so loud her ears hurt. Her arms were so sore from hanging on she couldn't move. Anne closed her eyes. As the freight train rushed by, the wind pulled at her arms. Then the noise of the train started getting lower and quieter. Anne felt pins and needles on her feet and legs, which had gone to sleep from being trapped in one place for so long. But she forced herself to stand up. She looked down one last time into the dark water so far below and lowered her head and chest onto the top of the railing, making sure to lean toward the inside as she swung her legs over and got back onto the railroad track. Anne ran as fast as she could. When she reached the end of the bridge, she dove to the side and rolled down the embankment where the other kids were all waiting, their eyes popping out of their heads. "We thought you were squished by the train." Ginny sounded like she had been really worried. "You shouldn't have done that. That was really stupid." That would be Sally talking. "I don't know what I would have done if that girl hadn't helped me," gasped Anne. "What girl?" Oh, Fred never knew what was going on. "We didn't see anybody." "You're making stuff up again, Anne. Perry was always accusing her of something." "There was a girl. She must live on the other side and has gone home. You must have seen her. You're all liars, and you nearly got me killed. Some friends you are. We didn't make you cross that stupid bridge. You dared me." "Yeah, well, we didn't want to play with you anyway. We got to go home. New school year starts tomorrow." The kids all turned their backs on Anne and headed across the fields. Anne just stood there looking at the kids and then started walking back down the railroad track. She could still hear Jimmy's bagpipes, and to Anne, they sounded sad.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Wow. I don't know any child in the world that listened to that story who wouldn't want to read the next one. That was, yeah, absolutely. That was fabulous. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask Kathleen about I'm kind of curious about the sources of your writing. I mean, where are these just pulled out of your imagination, or is there some basis in reality without giving away too much?
I remember one time when I was young, we trying to get across a railway bridge over the Erie Canal.
Mm-hmm.
For people back east know what the Erie Canal is. And then, but now, it's funny, you remember something from your childhood. I searched the internet. I couldn't find that ledge.
No.
But I mean, I'm still here, so there must have been a ledge. So yeah, it's a memory that, yeah. I guess I go on the assumption that if it's something from my childhood that I still remember at the advanced age that I am, yeah. It must be worth telling again. That's the
Yeah,
idea.
absolutely. Yeah, it stayed with you for a reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it stays for a reason.
Beautiful.
And I believe in what I'm now calling situationalism for kids. And that situationalism is the idea that it's not just the great big things in life that matter, but your everyday life. And that if we tell people only stories should be about big things, we're telling them that their everyday lives are nothing.
Mm-hmm. True.
And so I'm really into that situationalism.
Beautiful. Well, and I'm glad you are. And I'm 100% on board with that. I think the greatest stories are recognizing in the small things in life what is actually going on. It's, yeah, beautiful. Wow. Any other thoughts or questions out there from anybody? Yes, Laura.
During like past situations or current situation, like, they were like the same in a way. And I thought that's pretty important.
So I think it's, yeah, I mean, I guess because that's what happens to me all the time, and that's what used to happen when I was a kid. So I thought, why not make it part of the story? But I always find it kind of tricky because, because it can be mix people up. But then again, I think in my own head, I get things mixed up a lot.
And the situation was so big. It's like,
Yeah.
really making this picture, it's kind of like watching a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's because you segue them in so tightly, and they're not long extended flashbacks where people forget what timeline they're in. So you don't lose track, right? It is. I think it's very true that's the way we are when we are in a situation. The past similar situations flip up through. Our brains kind of program that way, right? Especially when we're younger. So it adds authenticity, I think, when you do that. It's great. Yeah.
I don't have any questions to ask. I just want to tell you that you're a marvelous writer.
Absolutely.
It's like the picture was living in my head.
Yeah.
The words that you were speaking.
Yeah.
And Laura, how she said about the movie kind of going in the head, it was as though I was there on the ledge with her. And it was just like the tension, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I'm like, is she gonna jump? Is she gonna survive? I was completely invested. So
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I mean, it's hard for me being here in real life instead of Zoom where I can hide a bit. But I took great courage by, hearing that wonderful children's story and the idea of animal rights and the fact that if you believe in something, you can do it. And I guess, because I'm always very scared, but I believe in it so much that overcomes it. But it's nice to be encouraged. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, I think from the first time Kathleen read it, Electric Mermaid, we all recognized the uniqueness of her voice and her ability to capture young people's voices and the way they think just so well. We've all been believers from the very first day. And which brings us to our next reader, her partner, David Kipling, who is another one from the first time that he read it, Electric Mermaid. I said, wow, that's a solid writer there. And so we're really, really happy and lucky to have him here. How's everybody doing? Do you want to have a break before we do, David? Or
No, otherwise I want to come on this card tricks or something. Dance or something like this.
all right, we'll introduce David and we'll let him read first, and then. Okay. So a little bit about David before we get started here. He's a lifelong autosport fan and drag race announcer who has twice undergone race tuition, which I assume means you qualify to be a drag racer or something. You fill us in on that.
You need no qualification to be a drag racer.
No,
You
okay.
Put your foot down.
Okay. just be a little crazy. Okay. So he runs an archive website on British stock car racing history and has sporadically written autosport journalism. He's taught technical communication at BCIT for 30 years. And after 6 years of drumming classes under a patient professional drummer, decided not to change his day job. His letters go out continually to editors, and he feeds his happy addiction for reading and writing by taking part in groups such as the Electric Mermaid, and we're so glad that he does. So David also contributed a piece to the Alberniology, which if you haven't read it yet, you need to, and you need to read David's piece about the wreckers in Port Alberni. It's fantastic. So looking forward to what you have to share with us tonight. David, take it away.
Okay, thank you. The journalist tried to shake off the feeling of depression that seeped into her from the antiseptic lawns, courtyards, and the bungalows of the nursing home complex. Like scenes in her grandparents' photo album, the identical white walls, the tidy black roofs, the 50s architecture, the cemetery atmosphere, all this preserved behind the blank street walls of the nursing home. Outside, she was leaving the colourful London bustle of 2014, which would carry on without her. Already her editor's assignment to capture oral histories from some long-term residents felt like a mission to lift reluctant tombstones from the earth. Her guide tapped on a numbered door and pushed it open, cheerfully calling, "Here she is, Mr. Webster, Miss Blackstock from the magazine. Be good now," and he left. "You said you would ask me questions, talk about my life and why I live here." Okay, he's our social worker. What an awful name, a social worker. He's been doing his rounds this week, getting us all to think back over the years for your magazine. He reckons it's a good way to keep our minds busy, get the old brain working. He's a youngster. I bet he's not 40. You look even younger, pardon me. Yes, you can write about what I say. Why should I care? I'm 82. From magazine, is it? Never mind my childhood. That was another life. Different life altogether, and it's gone. It was all on the canal barges with my mum. She skippered a barge during the war, back and forth, Birmingham to London, there and back. Women did that in those days. I was 13. Mind you, 13-year-olds worked back then. Oh, yes. My fourth hospital, this is. St. David's Nursing Home, it says on the gate. Sounds a bit soft to me. Nursing, like we're all babies in here. Before that, I was at the King's College Hospital, the military annex, and before that, in the Invalid and Crippled Children's Hospital over in West Ham. This social worker, can you believe it, had never even heard of the Invalid and Crippled Children's. He tells me I should only have disabilities, though I'm not crippled. I'm not even allowed to say that word. Fat lot he knows. So it's 4 hospitals I've lived in, most of my life. That recording machine is working, is it? The little light keeps blinking. Is that okay? Aren't you going to write notes as well, just in case? St. David's here is almost all ex-military, Army, Air Force, Navy. The reason I'm here is that someone pulled strings back in the war. My dad was killed in the war, infantry, fighting in Italy, a soldier he was. And when my mum was killed, she was doing wartime work on the canals, and I was with her, of course. The accident that put an end to everything was some unexploded bombs being loaded in the King Albert dock, right where our barge was moored for the night. So all in all, it was a military thing. Their fault, me being hurt and mum dying. Unexploded German bombs, but it was Englishmen that let one fall from the truck right beside us. 1943. I bet even your mum and dad weren't even born in 1943. I was a 13-year-old boy then. Everything I knew was blown to pieces. I'd be going pretty regular to the Salvation Army School for canal kids, the floating school they have here at the London end of the Grand Union Canal. My dad had told my mum before he was shipped out to make sure I got some reading and writing, so she put me in there now and then. So the Salvation Army got me onto the list for this servicemen medical scheme for when I would become an adult. My very first place was the Belgrave Hospital for Children. I was put in there and operated on right after the explosion. That was in Lambeth, the hospital was, south of the river, not far from the Kennington Oval, you know, the famous cricket ground. Though I never saw a match there. Hospital visitors and charity people, they used to ask me if I liked cricket and if I was ever taken to the Oval to watch the big matches. No, I was never taken, though it would have been nice. but with my leg and my innards, it wouldn't really have been possible. Not in those days, anyway. I remember the Belgrave Hospital, even though I only saw the outside of it a couple of times. It had a big archway over the door with those decorated ceramic tiles all over it that were gilded and coloured like pictures. The building looked more like a church or a museum with those fancy tiles and the archway when you went in or out on a stretcher looking up. That was when I was still really bad. A lot of my innards, and my waterworks was gone, and they'd have to take off my leg from the gangrene. It's funny, I used to think that there was a choir singing there, music, but there never was. Why did I think that? I only ever went through that archway with the coloured tiles up there, lying flat on a stretcher. I was carried in, of course, but I was still a stretcher case, even years later when they moved me on to the next place. The choir, the singing, it stayed with me ever since, even if it wasn't real. Then they moved me to the Invalid and Crippled Children's Hospital when there was nothing more for me to do with for me regarding immediate surgery. At the Crippled, it was just living and being in bed and being looked after. Lots of youngsters died there. They were too ill, too injured, couldn't be saved. It's odd, really, because the Crippled also didn't look like a hospital. It was really two big houses side by side, and they'd been joined together. It's all on my cards. There's cards for all my information. They're very good, really, with all the files and so on. So that was 1946, I think, when I moved to the Invalid and Crippled. So still a child then, officially. There was a railway line somewhere not far from the Crippled Children's. You couldn't see it, but you could hear the trains, day and night, steam trains, not like now, puffing and hissing. I like that. And the clanking when they were coupling the wagons. Oh, and the whistles, whoo, in the night when everything was dark. The Crippled was in West Ham. Funny, West Ham Stadium was world famous, but I never got to go there either. You have to understand, people were kind enough in their own way back then, but us youngsters were not taken out on trips and visits. Well, some of us weren't. Some of us looked pretty rough, a bit too much for the public to look at, and our wheelchairs and the medical things, so to speak. I'd love to have seen the football there at West Ham. The team's nickname was the Hammers. Up the Hammers, we'd shout on a match day from our beds. And the stadium also had a cinder track around the outside for the speedway bikes. They were famous in those days. It was always in the papers. I tell a lie. One or two of the kids did get taken to the speedway races. The kids who could sit up properly in wheelchairs and didn't need so many pipes and tubes. There was a good kids comic back then, a weekly called Champions, all about sport, and it often had a speedway cartoon or a football cartoon. They even used real names. I suppose they got permission. And Bouncing Briggs, he was made up, not real. Bouncing Briggs, I loved him in the comic. He was a rag and bone man, a scrap dealer, a poor man who trained by himself running along the railway tracks. West Ham itself was a very poor area, back then, pretty rough as a neighbourhood. You wouldn't have wanted to walk about by yourself, not then. Not that I ever did, of course, but you can imagine, can't you? Our nurses were lovely, Some of them were not locals, not what you'd call West Ham types of girl at all. Some of them were a nicer class of person, young ladies, really, but they'd had their training during the war, I suppose. Now I come to think of it. So given what they'd have seen in the war, it didn't bother them too much how we looked and the sort of injuries and illnesses we had. They did everything. It's amazing looking back how they coped, them being young ladies. I mean, I'm not exactly a beauty, am I now? Even to be honest. But 60 years ago, I was very banged up, and the scars and my insides and so on. And these nurses were so kind to us, it sometimes brought tears to our eyes, those of us who had eyes anyway. How could they put up with what they had to do and what they had to look at close up? That was before all the new science and medicines and modern training. Damn near a butcher's shop, to be blunt. It was like the back of a butcher's shop. Never mind me, some of the grown men from the war, wounded infantrymen, they were never going to be seen in public ever. The worst were taken down to East Grinstead. Do you know East Grinstead? Closed military hospital, servicemen only. A lot of them were there for life. Are there for life even now. Some are so bad it's just a matter of caring for them as best they can while they live. There's nothing to be done, especially them poor souls in the burns unit. I've heard about them. Look, my dear, I'm sorry if this upsets you. Haven't you got the list of all what's wrong with me? Altogether, it's a lot. Makes grim reading, I imagine. I lost most of my innards. I don't like those medical words. A good bit of my insides and waterworks. That and my eye. Do you know how I was when they found me in the ruins of the docks? I was on my back with a 3-foot broken length of iron railing, an actual heavy length of iron right through my stomach, my middle and out the side. I've actually lost some of my memory from that day, but I think they have it all written down. Then there was a gangrene. Nobody's fault really, but with my injuries, it must have got infected, my leg. So that was amputated at the Belgrave a few weeks later. I've had different devices to make up for my innards. It's a miracle how it's improved. I get by quite nicely, all things considered. Back then, it was not much fun, I can tell you. It was horrible. They didn't have modern things. And to be honest, I reckon they put you in bed and quietly hoped you wouldn't last very long. But then after the war, the military doctors and nurses were set free, so to speak, joined the new national health. So by the 1950s, there was lots more care and money and medicine. If I was a young chap and got injured like that today, good grief, I'd likely be up and about in no time. I was born too soon, wasn't I? Why am I here? Well, I'm here because I don't have anywhere else, and I don't have anyone else. No family, if you want the truth. I also have my nerves. I get a bit of a turn now and then with my nerves. My age or the bang on the head all those years ago, I don't know. So with one thing and another, they reckon I'm best off staying here. No family, not that I know of. What? Good grief, no. I was only a lad of 13 when it happened. No, I've never had a girlfriend, never been married, nor had a lady friend. No, I know what you're going to ask. You needn't ask it. I'm a single man, and a single man I shall stay. I'm very well placed here, and what I don't have, and don't weep over. Hey, no kind looks from you, thank you. I don't need that. Back to now. I do allow myself a flutter on the horses. We have televisions here, several in fact, in the lounges, and I do enjoy the horse racing. There's a little group of us, we follow the horses, and one of the attendants takes our bets down to the bookie on Ealing Broadway. Apparently he's an Asian chap, the bookie, from India or Pakistan, somewhere out there, but very straight, does everything right, down to the penny. No, we've never met him, now would we? We do okay from our little bit of betting, but that's a secret. Don't tell the taxman, eh? Me, I enjoy a cigar. We have to smoke in the covered patio these days. Anyway, last time I won on the GGs, I treated myself to one of these. See this? It's called an Arturo Fuente. Spanish name, I think that's how you say it, Arturo Fuente. Cuban, I shouldn't be surprised. The good cigars are always Cuban, weren't they? The young fellow in the kitchen, he runs errands for us as a favour, so he got this cigar for me. No, I don't suppose you would smoke cigars, would you? Though we had a matron at the Crippled, she smoked them. No nonsense, she was. Big, strong woman, used to duck into her office, and a minute later you could smell a cigar. Well, cigarillos, really, those little ones. What was the name? Whiffs, that was it. The cigar for the working man. It was advertised, whiffs, and they did whiff, I know all I can tell you. Cheroots, that was another name for them, cheroots. Flat packet with 5 little cigars in it, or you could get them in a tin, blue metal tin, so they didn't get squashed. The posh cigars, this one here, they sell them in ones. You don't have to buy a box full. This one cost £2. You wouldn't believe it, would you? £2? When I was a lad, £2 was a good week's wages. You could live easily for a week on two quid. Now I can sit and smoke it and blow the smoke about, and who cares? I'm happy. I don't care what anyone says. Do I regret anything? What a question. Social worker says we're not allowed to regret things. That's the rule nowadays. You're behind the times, my love. No regrets allowed these days. Well, if you're going to push, then I'd say, to be blunt, I regret having my bloody insides blown away, losing my bloody leg and one eye and being a fucking cripple all my life. How about those regrets for you? That do for you? Living my whole bloody life in hospitals and nursing homes, having no family, never had a girlfriend, or anything that young men and women do, those things, sitting around, what is it, 2014, 82 years old. They're really just waiting for me to do the decent thing and fall off the perch. Regrets, never having a job, not after the barge. That's another regret. Oh yes, I made baskets, and I sewed sacks, and I was trying to do shoe repairs. Who knows, your people may have walked around in shoes I repaired. Or perhaps your street sign too. We painted street signs using stencils, cut out letters, heavy cast iron street signs. Where do you live? What's your street called? Never mind. Sorry, I shouted. Beaumont Road, that's one I painted. I can remember Beaumont Road because our ignorant bloody supervisor couldn't even spell Beaumont, and we were just round the corner from it. Beaumont, for God's sake, how ignorant can you get? He despised us, that man. He hated me because I read books. He'd been a prison guard before. Beaumont Road, and he couldn't spell it, and we got into a proper shouting match, and the matron came out. She told me to spell it the way he said, because the main thing I was learning to paint signs and learning, what did she call it? Coordination and cooperation and being calm and not letting my bad nerves take over. They had the attendants come and hold me down for a bit. So they wanted me to sit there and paint a road sign I knew was wrong. How's that for being humiliated? Would you like it that in your magazine if your boss said England was spelled with an I, not an E, and you had to do it because it's your job? Sorry, give me one of those tissues. I get excited now and then. Not supposed to get excited, are you, in a nursing home, or only a little bit? The mental man, we call him a mental man among ourselves. The mental man says it's good to be a little bit excited, to express your emotions, he says. Articulate your feelings, he says, but mind you, only a little bit. He doesn't like it if I express a lot of emotions. Oh no, that's not allowed. So there we are. Listen, that's the tea bell, and here's me all worked up. But bless you, I hope you can make something useful out of all this nattering. Not that anyone reading it would know me anyway, but I am someone. I'm not nobody. I am someone. And those things I told you are what I've known in my life. So there you go. Mind that trolley there. People are always bumping into it. And that carpet edge is a bloody danger. I've told them time and time again to get that glued or nailed down. I waste my breath. The journalist fiddled with a notebook and pen and stopped the recorder. She looked cautiously at Mr. Webster. You haven't really mentioned much about your earlier life, much, your childhood. Another time, maybe? That I told you already. There was a young lad called Jacko Webster, and his mum, Rosie Webster, and they ran a canal barge. There was his dad, Ernie Webster, killed in the Italian campaign. That's all gone. That's not me, not now. Like an old book on the shelf. No one looks at it anymore. Look at the time now. You better get off or I'll miss my tea. Off you go, shoo. You don't want to hear a lot of nonsense about those old days. Mind that carpet now. Goodbye.
Wow. Beautiful. What a character study. That was amazing. Yeah, absolutely. That was fabulous, David. Any questions from the audience out there? Anybody in Zoom land have anything they want to ask David? We're all in another world right now. I think you took us somewhere else.
It's all true. Everything's true except the story. No, it's terrible. Yeah, it's all true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this stuff's actually happened then.
Yeah, I mean, I had a piece. I wrote some pieces about Jacko as a boy with his mum. You know, there's a kind of history of the women running the barges, the industrial barges in England. And so I wrote a series of slices about that and going up and coming back and eventually being blown up, as some of them were in the blips. And then I suddenly went on to this, and I thought, well, let's move on another 70 years. What would have happened to Jacko? And so there he is, and what he's done, he's been in a hospital for 70 years.
Yeah.
Hospital, and you know, that's as you know, what they don't know, the people who have been in hospital, you know, servicemen from the way back in the States, from Vietnam and the Falklands, closed hospitals, and it's just never talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember actually there was a hospital in London, Ontario like that was for vets, and it was right at the end of the bus loop. So the bus would go all the way out there and then turn around and come back into town. And I remember going out there one time, and one of the old guys was sitting on the bench, and as the bus pulled away, he pulled his leg off and waved goodbye. That'd be him right there. Yeah, unreal. Well, thank you very much, David. That was awesome. Well, I see I've gone out of focus. I'm going to have to stop my video. Start it again. There, I'm back in focus. Yeah, that fixed it. Thanks for the tip, Char. All right, I think we better take a little break now for 10 minutes or so, and then we'll reconvene. And Robert Gunn is going to be our first up after we're back there. If Robert is going to be followed by Joe Lunchbucket, who's followed by Monica Ahlroos, and then Vicky Drybough, and then Sharon Saunders. So So you know the road ahead. Okay. Yeah. On the Zoom. Oh, that was good. Yeah.
I'm struggling because the questions. The questions are.
Oh, were there questions in the chat?
No, like the ones in the room.
Right, of course. Yeah.
But I won't interrupt you right now, but do Facebook.
No, I think I brought it up. The page.
Would you rather socialize a little bit right now, or?
You know, I mean, I'm quite happy if you just want to get in there and do it.
Is that okay?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You stretch.
All right.
Yeah, you stretch. And did you stop the camera? Otherwise, I'll be on the camera the whole time.
Back to the Zoom here.
Me grunting and groaning.
Yeah, making these faces like, oh, hang on. Yeah, here we are. And stop video. Okay, and then back to here. There you go.
I want to clean my hands. I did. A small glass, but why don't I count you one? No, but it'll get the small one. Yeah. Yes, I Oh, good. I had to, it took me quite a while to find how to do it, so when I sent you the message, I just was able to do that.
Oh, good.
So it was quick. Wait. Say
Oh, that's-
no. Yes, say, just click the X there.
Okay.
Sorry, so if you're, good, so go ahead, yeah. So adding me, okay. We're trying to add me.
Yeah.
There, and then. Okay, now I have to study. You don't want to tell me your password, do you? No. Now I have to study because it, okay, something, this person has, oh. Okay, I think you did it.
Okay. See if we got an invite or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to waste your time right now. I'm going to close it. And when you go home,
Check it.
will you just close this and then reopen it? So it will be in the same spot,
Okay. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's where it is. I'm just going to study it, but you go ahead and be part of the evening. I don't want to waste your time. So
Yeah. Well, we should probably get started. Again.
Okay, I set my timer.
Okay.
We're at 7.
Oh, we're at 7 minutes. Okay. That's a couple minutes.
But, or now is
You know what? I'm
probably
going to
good.
run to the bathroom.
Yes, good. Good.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
Derek was smart. He turned this thing off. I didn't. I forgot to turn my camera on.
Oh. Let me go back to it now. We'll give David a minute to get back to his chair there.
He was here. Robert. Oh,
There he is.
I couldn't see him there.
All right, we're going to get started again. So we're back to our local open micers now, and we're going to start off with Robert Gunn. Take it away there, Robert.
This follows from David's magazine piece. Just having some fun with it's called Charlie Foxtrot 2022, and it's really a piece of prose with some poetic flourishes. The haggard edges, great power orders, poke uneasily into their neighbors. Old long-dead compromises, complete stranded language truths, write the spurious future justifications. Fortunate indeed is the empire protected by devotions. Friction at these edges is lubricated for a time by rhetoric, then threats, and now by platitude. These impermanent lines harden to become a geared beat grinder, steel on flesh, microchip driven, drone observed targets, laser guided rapid fire big guns, leave behind the soup sandwich of civilians and dear children. At home, complacent generals, ruddy faced, fruit salad chested, walk with complicit chatter beside their stern president. Their gold-braided shoulders looking both czars and ridiculous. Only their actions belie any width of opera. Or they pontificate for us on CNN from the comfort of their old age and their bookline studies. Their words become force multipliers in our imagination. Their plans of attack still do behind on the nowhere. With the dominant
Go close to the mic.
all those imagined faceless artists, now all too real, full YouTube color, with phone-covered clips, leaving gaping black-eyed apartments, stripped to the skin by missile, exposing materials.
A little closer to the mic, Robert.
Yeah.
Trap iron, litters the land, news and opinion, confirmed or merely hopeful, devoured along with maps and fictional moving other giants and arrows made real by Monday morning commentators. We become delighted consumers of propaganda, justifications for the death of innocence, and the sanctity and righteousness of our leaders' decisions. Propaganda, said the priest, all is propaganda. Meanwhile, on many fields in Eastern Europe, no sentimental poppies sprout, nor much needed wheat, only jagged lines of thin trenches between ruined villages. 100 years becomes a circle, teaching us nothing but importance, but only new lessons for death ladders and top brass. Always the bond sellers and merchants of pain, eager for government borrowing, respond with joy. No supply chain issues here in the arms race. footnotes now replaced by cheaper used steady gold. Camo and face, javelin carriers, their weapons of astonishing power and accuracy, able to penetrate steel and those inside with a bullet through it. Countries learning from the past continue to sign patterns. Little Belgium and Poland forward their hand. Existential threats become a Charlie Fox.
Yeah, thank you for that, Robert. Yeah, 100 years, it's like we haven't learned anything. In some ways, it feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah, thank you. All right, our next local reader is going to be Joe Lunchbucket, aka Bob Franco. Get into the mic there. Yeah.
States for the truth to celebrate 1 year maximum. Slogans are posted on blackboard, denoting the needs and the achievements. R&D, research and development, and work projects, and accident investigation. WCDSM, WCD safety units. PHSL, foreign set asks, what the hell's that? The writer wrote it said, pure horse shit. The next week, someone broke a leg.
No.
Kennedy Hot Grass, the biggest line. The Union Committee member that stewarding around the operation saw a golden opportunity to hit the up for attention for the high-level in Madiak. One of the executives introduced himself as the company being founded. Said, we negotiate wage rates for unions and don't care if the money's over the wage pocket, the pension pocket. We're just concerned with the bottom line. You want the expension? Where's the government at the half phase? First phase man confirmed that he earned more than his brother first aid of the city. On retirement, the table returned. His brother's pension almost doubled his and ridiculous. He feared that if he lives too long, inflation would put him below poverty line. Union meeting heated up when a member got stabbed during the strike, trying to get elected on the union committee. Another union member said, on a point of information, this man stabbed on the campus, but it went out through stoppage. We want to stab like that committee. Silence was deafening. The guy had 2 votes and turned gas sweet there. Majority opinion in the boardroom discussion was that RT pieces were gay. One person voiced no. Do you mean that the Pope and the Dalai are queer too? Alberni B.C, but as a street named after them, majority to take the name of the Lord in vain. Instead, I'd be goddamn surprised if it weren't. I had made delegates try to avert private shutdown. However, Emcee shareholder meeting. World demand for plywood rises. CEO agrees, saying, yeah, they have those sellers too, but they plan to build a plywood mill in central Canada, close to Robert and most a U.S. market. As for our taxpayers, we were not to make up the difference in taxes and the food down. But as Emcee shareholders, we couldn't disagree with the law. Court Alberni B.C. hit headlines, buying taking private back for $5. What a cruise she pulled off. No tax revenue and $1 million bill for cleaning up the pollution.
Thank you, Bob. All right, now we're going on to Monica Ahlroos. Oh, that's why it was hard to hear. All right. Monica has assured me she's going to give us something light and uplifting here. We're ready for some fun.
Hello, everybody. For some reason, I am really intrigued over politics, and last month I read about Mike Duffy. That was my first poem, and that was Canada, of course. Now we're going over to the next country, which is USA. And do I have to say more than this is about Trump's planet? Hey, I'm Trump, and I'm the most intelligent man on this planet. This planet has to be sparkly white, pure white, like white marble from Italy. Yeah. You remember Black Obama? Who said that he's American? I'm convinced that he is from Africa, one of those shithole countries. What? He's born in Hawaii? Tweet, 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 tweet. Fake news, fake news. Oh, I like blacks. They just need to be managed. Put them in Mississippi River where it's flooding all the time. Now, Mexicans are walking in to USA. Yeah. Like buffalo herds. Lots of it. Lots. I'm building a wall. And it's going to be all around the whole country. Yeah. Also, up north, the Canadian border. That is also another strange group. Have you seen their two-faced prime minister? We are not paying for that war. No. They are. General Kelly was brought in to take care of toddler Trump, who had about 12 seconds attention span. It's easy being US president. Easiest job in the world. I watch TV alone, eat hamburger, drink Coke. I can do whatever I like. I can get up when I want, and I can sit down when I want. I can grab some pussy when I want, and Stormy Daniels is the biggest of them all. What? Abuse? Tweet, 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 fake news, fake news. No. They love it. Now, Trump took the rocket and went to see the Rocket Man. North Korea has a funny looking leader. He's like a green alien, but gray, black square head, yellow face, slits for eyes. He wanted me to step over the south-north line. And I did it. It is like skipping rope. In, out, and I got hot, and we fell in love, and he likes my hair. What? They are communist country and people are suffering. Tweet, 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 fake news, fake news. I didn't see it. I have a big white sandbox and my best friend's name is Vladimir Putin. We muck it around and we dig it around and we build so many buildings out of sand. We like all kinds of shapes and sizes. We don't need any concrete and rebar. We know the building codes. When we sell them, money, 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 money. You never have enough. No, 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 no. But Vladimir Putin is a bad man. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Fake news, fake news. You don't know him. General Kelly is having difficulties babysitting. I went to Europe, to the G8 summit, the Paris Accord. They were talking about environmental issues. What kind of fucking idiots are these guys? I have pulled off US from that bunch. So now they are G7. What? Global warming? Tweet, 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 fake news, fake news. I love the sun. Remember the Beatles? Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Ooh, yeah. John Lennon would know. Peace and love on earth. Hey, I stopped funding to the World Health Organization. The Black Ted, he's head of it. So do I have to say more? There's no COVID. This is something that is floating in the air. Lots of stuff is floating in the air. Planets. So I stopped funding to this orangutan organization. America, keep on doing what you always have done. What? Millions of people dying? Tweet, 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 fake news, fake news. Trump knows best. Just trust me. Okay. My white supremacist friends, I feel you. I love you. Biden is not US president. I'm sitting on my throne and I won't move. My plan is we take the beautiful White House for me. I'm the president. Look at me. I'm the president. Do you see my time? You, my friends, put on your armor. Buffalo fur hats with horns, with buffalo fur coat, bear skin, wolf head gear with teeth and tongue, spears, arrows, axes, and we hunt them down. Go after Pelosi's head first. Fight like hell.
We're going to have to cut you there. Thank you.
Heroic policemen and the rest of citizens understood what was happening and the red, white, blue country. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light? And Trump was dumped. Thank you.
And God help us if he rises from the ashes. Okay. All right, our next reader is Vicki Drybough, and Vicki's going to share a poem with us tonight, I believe.
Actually, I changed my mind.
All right.
It's just so inspiring and wonderful to listen to all these wonderful readers tonight. And I just got so happy being surrounded by readers that I don't need to read my silly poem, but I'm going to read maybe something I've read before. I don't remember. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's called Auntie Min. Sam was 15 and I was 8. The first time I went to visit Auntie Min without our parents. We had gone to town to buy a present for our mother's birthday, but missed the ferry home and had to wait an hour and a half for the next one. Let's go visit Auntie Min, said Sam, as we watched the ferry pull away from the wharf. Are we allowed? Sam shrugged, who cares? Auntie Min was surprised to see us and laughed and gave us each a hug. I thought she looked fancy in her black slacks and low-cut white blouse with big ruffle. She was bigger and softer than our mother and smelled really good. Not like those women whose perfume smelled like bug spray and made your eyes run. Her black wig sat on her head like a large bird, its wings fanning forward around her face, tail feathers spread out across the back of her head. As soon as we were through the door, the smell of stale cigarette smoke almost made me gag. We followed her into the living room. Sit down. I remembered from our last visit how our mother sat on the edge of her chair, her back straight, holding a small glass of Dubonnet, while my father laughed a lot and drank 3 whiskeys in a row. I watched Auntie Min take a cigarette from the silver box on the side table, fit it into a long black cigarette holder, and light it with a silver lighter. As soon as we sat down, she curled up in her chair. So, what are you doing in town all by yourselves? Buying something for our mom's birthday, said Sam right away. Oh, it's her birthday today? Auntie Min put her head back and blew a stream of smoke toward the ceiling. In a couple of days. What did you buy her? Sam's face got pink and I wondered why he was embarrassed. We're going out for dinner, so I ordered her a corsage for her new dress. It's a suit, I said. I bought her a package of 3 pretty handkerchiefs. Her nose is always running. From all that crying, said Auntie Min. I didn't know what she meant. Well, you be sure to tell her a big happy birthday from me. She sat up. Why don't you fix us some martinis, Sam? You remember, don't you? Sam stabbed me with a glance that meant keep your big mouth shut. My heart skipped a little. We were just kids, and Auntie Min wasn't the kind of person you could say no to. What if we got drunk? Maybe we'd walk and talk funny and get put in jail. I made up my mind I would not let myself get drunk. We all went into the kitchen. Sam opened the cupboard under the counter. There were lots of bottles. It looked like a shelf in a liquor store. He chose one with a black label and a red stripe. What does it say? She looked at me. Vodka. Well, it isn't, said Auntie Min. I keep my good gin in it so nobody knows. She hides it, said Sam. Of course I hide it. Her brown, almost black eyes bored into me. Do you think I'm going to spend my hard-earned money on every thirsty asshole who walks in here? Sam moved around the kitchen as if he knew exactly where everything was. He fetched ice from the fridge, got various glass containers from cupboards, as well as 3 martini glasses. You, she turned to me and I nearly jumped. Do you know what a teaspoon is? Yes. How old did she think I was anyway? Open that drawer and take out a long-handled teaspoon. Sam began by filling the glasses with ice to chill them and putting ice in something she called a beaker. I watched Auntie Min's hands. There was a frill around the bottom of her sleeves. which made her wrinkled hands look kind of pretty. She had long fingers with bright red nails and a lot of diamond rings. My mother only had a small gold wedding band. She watched like a bird of prey as Sam poured the gin into the beaker with a steady hand. He looked like a scientist mixing a potion. He didn't spill a drop. His face was calm, no wrinkles on his forehead, his mouth soft, not hard and straight like it usually was at home. Auntie Min pointed to the spoon. All right, your turn. Stir that and count to 30. As I was stirring and counting, Sam got a jar of olives from the fridge and took the top off. He and Auntie Min grinned at each other. When I was finished, he placed a tea strainer over the spout of the beaker and drained the liquid into her glass. My mother used a tea strainer when she served tea to her friends. It kept the tea leaves from getting into their cups. I would have to tell her that she could also use it for making martinis. She would be surprised when I showed her exactly how to do it.
Very surprised indeed, I'm sure. Thank you, Vicki. All right, our next local reader is Sharon Saunders.
Okay, so I had a hard time deciding which story I wanted to read you guys tonight, but I decided to go with one that I've been writing for a contest. And there's this website that I found. I'll share it with everybody in case you want to try to get some bucks too. But anyways, it's a werewolf story, and it is so far out of anything I've ever written. I don't know anything about werewolves. I actually had to go other than, you know, what you hear in general stories. So I started going and looking at people with PhDs in werewolf lore, and there's apparently a bunch of lore that I wasn't familiar with. So anyways, I will start with my first character. Her name is Maddie. The voice of Ladir, senior council member of the clan, carried upward to where Maddie Alley crouched between a gargoyle and a bunch of fancy concrete figs. Placing a hand on one of the wings of the stone creature, she pulled and shifted in her position, trying to relieve the pressure point under her left buttock to make room for the insistent stem of the cluster. The beta cannot assume co-leadership duties without the right of challenge. We shouldn't throw away our identity because some of us no longer wish to follow the old way. We've always done it this way for a reason, she heard the man say, his voice cold and stern, its cadence like a dragon-head battering ram against the great hall doors, thundering against the ears of those who sat around the table. Maddie knew to expect such, having been present, albeit from the loftier position, over the course of at least 5 years now. Though Ladir's entire frame was outside her field of view, Maddie could hear his heavy footfall. The flooring of the chamber groaned and creaked from his enormous girth. To share leadership is to weaken the alpha's position. The one who relies on the opinions of others soon finds himself unable to make his own decisions. Ladir stared down his crooked nose to look at each member directly. His piercing yellow wolf eyes met the pack's obsidian black. Ladir stood before them, hoping to drive the council toward a physical challenge as an act of defiance against the alpha. He dared not directly question the king, but he could manage to scare the committee into compliance. Hearing none of the familiar uprisings around the table, his petitions largely ignored, Maddie predicted the wolf would change his tactics. He would become amiable, telling a joke or two. Then he would appeal to a common familial bond between the members present to bring some of the more impressionable members to his side. And as if on cue, Ladir laughed. Maddie observed a chilly smile that never reached his eyes creep across his lips. Gentlemen, we are brothers. There's no need for duality upon the throne. Who would dare seek to overthrow our beloved King Erigafel? Hell has grown up before our very eyes. All love him. Maddie scoffed. The answer to his question stood before them, Ladir and any who sided with him. With the audience under the thrall of his oratory skill, his behavior would soon resume its ordinary course. And I'll stop there because I'm just getting too nervous. So, anyways, that's the beginning of it. I'm like 12 or 13 chapters in, and it's just a story that's kind of grown out of my imagination. And it came from a question where, so I wanted to include something about werewolves in libraries, because I had this visual of this werewolf poring over this book and looking through it. And I thought, you know, many times, like within our communities, the use of library to some degree is dying out because of the electronic books and such. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to present stories to children that they might like, you know, to encourage them to go to the library. And so then I also wanted to work in some of the historical stuff. Like there's a library in Constantinople that burned down in 337 CE. And so I thought, wouldn't it be weird if it was because of a mage? And so I'm weaving all of these story details in there. But
Fabulous.
is there any questions?
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm going to be the last reader of the night. Great imagination on that story. That's going to be exciting to see where it all ends up. Very exciting. Well, and there's joy in discovery, right? When you're not sure where it's going and you just discover the story as you go along, it's great. Yeah. So I've got a few short poems I want to read to you. For some reason, I started writing these poems about back in Kapuskasing, Ontario, when I was 17. I mean, I grew up in the city. When I was 17, I was a junior ranger and got sent to Kapuskasing, Ontario, which was a little mill town in the north. And so I did a lot of growing up there. I ended up going back up for a few summers after that. And then one winter, I even stayed on and worked at the ski hill up there. So, yeah, it's kind of figured into my youth, and I've been, I don't know, revisiting it for some reason. Hopefully I'll find out by the time I finish all the poems. So this is called Labor Lesson at Camp McCowan. We were 17 and too eager to please the foreman for our own good. Ended up nipple deep in that tepid creek, the color of rust and muskeg, pulling waterlogged poplar and discarded logging cable onto the bank, dredging black muck off the bottom for the flower beds in camp. A government show, make work project to teach city kids to work in the bush. Come lunch, we bummed a chunk of pork fat from Medrick the cook, tucked it into a clean pickle bottle and sank it in a pool just upstream from where we were working. Then went back to slogging our wet asses through the water weeds and logging slash, trading tabernacles like we were lumberjacks cutting cords of pulpwood for big bucks, rather than junior rangers working for $5 a day. At coffee time, we pulled that jar up and showed the foreman the white pork, tentacled black with leeches, his eyes wide and the roly almost falling from his lips. We got off early with orders to shower and check our short and curlies. By dinner time, we were the talk of the camp, bloodsucker boys, tough fuckers who survived a stint in newly named Leech Creek. And I learned early how to work smarter, not harder. Homesickness. That first summer I worked in the northern woods, a group of us city kids hiked away from camp after dinner. We walked a mile or two of cutover, chatting about home before the hum of the camp generator faded and fell. Somewhere on the edge of a black spruce swamp we stopped, and for our first time, we heard the silence of a world without traffic or television or lawnmowers starting. I heard it as a presence, a patient presence that waited without waiting. I did not miss my parents' house then, with its familiar bread smells and expectations. nor the faces familiar as my own. It was the silence I had missed in my room or downstairs in the rec room when the rest of the family had fled to bed. It was a silence in between thoughts where a life was growing without them. And each moment of it was of my own choosing. And that night in the forest north of Kapuskasing, I knew I had been homesick for a long time. And the last one is from the perspective of me as an old man looking back. Oh, maybe it snowed. These winter nights, I hear the ricochet of King Crimson's rhythms in the bandstand, where we kissed as young lovers kiss, all lips and tongue and longing, where we rocked out high on blonde Lebanese, head bopping in our frayed bell bottoms and polka dot tops. Hip to hip that New Year's Eve, we hitched north for Kapuskasing, bent on crashing the annual bash at the Cap Hotel. Maybe it snowed. Maybe the road had no end. You called me baby, and I was helpless in your arms, forgot the trickle of traffic, a frigid night. 500 miles of frozen highway couldn't cool our heat. Somewhere close to Timmins, a pickup stopped with 2 black labs in the back. The driver spread a sleeping bag, and the dogs curled in behind our knees, and maybe it snowed. All I know is the Canadian Shield couldn't hold us. The northern lights rippled in your eyes. Maybe the road disappeared in snow. At midnight, we made love in the Cochrane Hotel, never made it to Cap, never made it better. We were young enough to love the snow then, the slate smell of it, the way it sparkled in next year's sun. Thank you. And that about wraps up the Electric Mermaid for the month of May. So just want to say a big thank you to all of you for coming out and to all you folks in Zoom land who joined us. And super big thanks to Char, of course, for running this whole thing and making it all happen. Thank you, Char. E-transfer at charslanding.com for those in Zoom land. And thank you, of course, to Karl, our moderator, for keeping everything on track as well. Thank you so much to our featured readers tonight, Laura and Kathleen and David, and to everyone who read. I think we had a real range of material tonight, and I, for one, was taken away to many different places just listening to those pieces. So thank you all for coming, and let's hang out a little bit more. And
thank you to Derek.
Oh, and my pleasure. And we look forward to seeing everybody again in June, that last Wednesday in June. And I forgot to look at who our featured reader
It's
is.
Sydney Peterson. She's actually here tonight.
Oh,
Right there.
Sydney. All right. Good. Looking forward to hearing your piece and your feature. Well, and that's what we love. It's eclectic, right? It's the eclectic Electric Mermaid. It's all over, and we welcome it all. Fabulous. All right, so don't feel like you have to run away if you want to hang out.
Thank you, Jennifer,
and
staying
chat.
up so late. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks.
Jennifer, have a good sleep.
You're back.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Jen, sorry about that. The mic got turned off there for a couple of the open micers. And
Yeah, I think Joy dropped out about that time, I think, was when she signed off, just about then, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
The third one after the break, it was back.
yeah, Char figured it out eventually. She always does.
We can't wait to see you in person one day.
There you go.
Great, man. You ever make it out this way?
Yeah. I'll keep it in mind if I'm ever out that far.
It's a little bit of a
If you
journey.
drink wine or beer, I will buy you whatever you drink.
I'll pick the most expensive thing in the house.
There we go.
Cognac.
Cognac, yeah. The house's best cognac, a bottle.
Night.
All right.
Jen,
See
sorry
you in June.
about Joe Lunchbucket. I'm
Take
just
care.
gonna get him to read it again now. So we'll have it on so you can hear it and we'll have it on recording.
Okay, I got to get to bed, but I'll check. I can check the recording out.
Okay, good. Good to see
Night, night.
Okay. Good night.
Okay. Hello. There's a bunch of collection of raunchy lager tales. Right. Foreman is barbecuing steaks for his crew to celebrate 1 year accident-free. Slogans are posted on blackboard denoting the means that enabled them to achieve this. R&D, research and development of work practices and accident investigations. WCBSM, WCB safety meetings, PHSL. Foreman asked, "What the hell's that?" The guy that wrote it said, "Pure horseshit luck." The next week, someone broke a leg. M&B top brass visit Franklin River, their biggest logging division. The union committee member that's touring them around the operation saw a golden opportunity to hit them up for a pension that the IWA didn't have yet. One of the executives introduced himself as a company bean counter. He said, "We negotiate wage rates with unions and don't care if the money goes in workers' wage pocket or pension pocket. We're just concerned with the bottom line. You want indexed pension? Work for government at half rate." Franklin River first aid man confirmed that he earned more than his brother first aiding for city. Upon retirement, the tables were turned. His brother's pension almost doubled his and was indexed. He fears that if he lives too long, inflation will put him below poverty line. Union meeting heated up when a member that scabbed during a strike tried to get elected on union committee. Another union member said, "On a point of information, this man scabbed the mechanics when they went on work stoppage. Do we want to scab like that on our committee?" The silence was deafening. The guy got 2 votes and turned ghastly pale. Majority opinion in barroom discussion was that all the RC priests were gay. One person voiced doubt, asking, "Do you mean that the Pope and Dalai Lama are queer too?" Port Alberni's red alderman that has a street named after him resorted to taking the name of the Lord in vain. He said, "I'd be goddamn surprised if they weren't." IWA delegates tried to avert Alberni plywood shutdown, telling M&B shareholders meeting that world demand for plywood is rising. CEO agrees, saying they have those figures too, but they plan to build a plywood mill in central Canada, close to raw material and most Canadian and US market. As Port Alberni taxpayers, we would have to make up the difference in taxes on the closed mill. But as M&B shareholders, we couldn't disagree with that logic. Port Alberni mayor had headlines, "Buying vacant plywood plant for $1." What a buy. Now we had no tax revenue and $1 million bill for cleaning up the pollution.